Okay, let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to day 2 of the Presentation Ideas 2019 conference. My name is Garland Colson. I'm your host, and I am the marketing director of PresentationPoint, who are hosting this conference and who are the sponsors. And we pulled this together so people can learn how to present better, how to have more impact, how to work differently with PowerPoint, and we've had a lot of great information. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Vickie Gould. Vickie Gould is a book coach and content marketing strategist, and she's the author of 10 international best-selling books, and she's helped nearly 100 others become worldwide best-selling authors. She's been featured in Entrepreneur, TEDx U of M, HuffPost, Thrive Global, YFS Magazine, and seen on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. So we're really looking forward to Vickie's presentation. If you do have questions for Vickie, please ask them in the chat area down below. Vickie, if you can see the chat area, you can answer them as you want or wait till the end, or if you want me to highlight you when there's one, we can do that as well. So take it away, Vickie.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me and putting this together. You know, I do the easy part. I just show up. And I know you do a lot of hard work in the background, so we appreciate all of that. My part in this presentation is to share how you can be more memorable and close more sales with stories. Right. Well, I was in the middle of saying my part is about talking about being memorable and closing more sales with story. And when I say close more sales, it also means helping people to take the next action steps, because I know not everybody on here is about closing more sales all the time. And in a Fast Company article, which shared why storytelling is the ultimate weapon, they shared that humans simply aren't moved by action, by data dumps, and dense PowerPoint slides or spreadsheets with figures. People are moved by emotion, and the best way to emotionally connect with other people to our agenda begins with once upon a time. Now, some people know me as the Words Lady, and Garland has done a great job introducing me. If I was interviewed on the radio, they talk about all those things about the bestsellers and all that, and helping people to get stories out of their belly, becoming best-selling authors, and I help them create a revenue stream based on that story and what they do with their stories. But what you might not know is that there was a time that I actually thought that I could outrun my own story. So it was back in 1989, and it was the second semester of my senior year in high school, and another potentially horrid night with my mother. My dad wasn't home, which meant my buffer was gone. And my mom, she stood 5'4", but when she screamed, she could be 6'9". At least it seemed like it. And though she weighed probably like 110 pounds, somehow she seemed like she had the muscles and the strength when she was angry at me of that of a bodybuilder 4 times my size. But don't get me wrong, I love my mother. But for some reason, I reminded her of all of her greatest failures. For some reason, she felt like when she looked at me, she saw her own eyes. I don't know whether that was it or because I just have a fiery personality. But all I know that night is that she had me in a headlock, and every now and again, I boldly put her in one too. And she yanked my hair, and I yanked hers back, and she grabbed my arm, and I got away. I ran upstairs, and I said, I'm done, I'm just so done. And I furiously packed my things. For some reason, I found a bungee cord in my closet. I hooked it to the leg of my canopy, and I tied my sheets to it. Now, I also took my backpack, because as a good Asian, I knew I was going to school the next day. And I strung that bungee cord and sheets out the window. And here's the thing. It's not really like the movies, where you gracefully go down the side of the building, like doink, 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 doink. With a bungee cord at the base, yeah, kind of just plunk out on the ground. But it's okay. I was all right. And I saw light in the distance, and somehow I ran towards that. And I called a friend to pick me up, and I vowed that I was never going back. But the words kept going through my head. You know that story that I thought I was outrunning? It replayed over and over again. You're not going to amount to anything. You're worthless. Lay down on the floor and die. Wish I never had you. You're not going to be anything. And once I became successful, I actually didn't want to tell people that story because in my culture, it would shame the family name. But since then, amidst all the tears and the confusion of, oh, why did I have to go through all that? And I healed my story and realized that it's through our vulnerabilities and our stories that we create our connections. When we share those stories in our business, we create a faster know, like, and trust. And so often we think that people are listening to our presentations because they just want to learn something, right? And we jump right in, leaving them to question, why should they even be listening to us? What makes you such an expert? Where's your credibility? And guess what? They also want us to entertain them. You may have heard the word edutainment, and that's what they want. I mean, we've all been in the presentation that's a snore fest, right? Now, I love when I'm doing things that people put stuff in the chat. So make sure you're commenting. Let me know what you're thinking, right? We've all been there where people start pulling out their phones, where you're daydreaming out the window, where you start taking notes about something else, where you might open your computer and start working on the next project versus listening to the person talking. And at that point, you know you've lost your audience. But listen, you tell your story right, and it will inspire and motivate people to work with you or take that next step or do that thing that you're hoping that they're going to do next, right? Because you evoked an emotion in their heart that made them want to take that action. That's like Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's why stories matter so much in your presentations. Now, you don't have to give a huge traumatic story, like mine was a little bit more deep. You can tell everyday stories. But let's talk about the 4 parts of a basic presentation, right? And this is in order. First, you share your story. That makes a point through the story, right? And that connection then will lead to the teaching points that you want to share, which is the second part. You want to hit them with something with head knowledge, right? Give them something to walk away with. And then the next thing is your juicy offer, that action that you want them to take. It's about possibility and the opportunity to be different than they've been, or use the things that you're learning or that they're learning from you in a different way and apply that to their business, right? And then the last thing is you leave them in their heart. You motivate them to take action. You get them fired up for what it is that you've talked about, right? So now that you know the order and why stories matter so much, let's go deep into how you break that story up today. Now, the story I just told you followed a formula that I call the STAGE formula. Each letter is a part of a 5-step formula. And this is the exact content I share in my program called Storytelling for Stages and Pages. So first, I'm going to do an overview, and then I'm going to go through each one step by step, so that you get the gist of how to connect all the pieces together, and it sounds like it's flowing rather than it's just created and you're trying to, throw it all in there. All right, so the STAGE formula. S is the super you. This is who you are, your accomplishments, your credentials, maybe your brag list. You don't want to spend too much time here, maybe 20 seconds, but it's the super you, right? And then there's a T, transition back. So this is where you share with your audience that it wasn't always this way, or it wasn't always done this way, and that you've had struggles, and now this then gets you to this all-time low in your story where you're having a struggle. Maybe you were trying to fix something, trying to create something to get you out of a situation, right? You share your feelings, your thoughts, and this is where you really want to share a lot of what's going on in your head, right? So that's the A for the stage. Then G is get back up. You must always bring your audience back out of your story higher than you started. So wherever they came in during the day, whether they had a rough time getting to the event or the office or whatever, and traffic was horrible and they're at a certain level emotionally, you want to bring them back out higher than they were when they started, so that they do feel that excitement, inspiration, and motivation, right? And you don't want to leave them in that low point, right? And then the last part is the E, that's the empowered you. You share how the story connects back to what you do now, why you do it, and how things are now different. So if you want a breakdown of this, I'm happy to send it to you. I can just throw a link into the comments if you want to go grab it. You can do that. But now let's break it down piece by piece with prompts that go with the S.T.A.G.E formula blueprint. So that super you. Now this is really for somebody who, like me, I'm presenting right now. People may not know a whole lot about me. You may skip this part if, let's say, you're doing a presentation at work and everybody already knows you, right? So you don't need to have this introduction. But the super you is something like, some people may know me as, or many people know that, or if I were to be interviewed, they might mention blah, blah, blah. So these are all the wonderful things that you've done. Then the transition back uses prompts like, but it wasn't always this way. But what people don't always realize is, but what you might not know is, or there was a time when, or, but what isn't as well known is, but the part that isn't mentioned is. So you're taking them back to, hey, things weren't always done this way. Now we have a better way, right? Because you're going to lead to that, right? And then the A for the all-time low. This is sharing a moment in time, not like a timeline of a huge number of events. You want to pick one moment that was change-making for you. How did it feel? What did you say to yourself? What did others say? What was it like? What was the struggle? What did it make difficult for you? All of those things, right? And now for, like, in an example, you want to make sure that you are sharing those emotions, because we're talking about emotions. And, you know, it's funny because I looked at all the titles for all the other presentations in presentation points, and I see how logical they are. And I'm the one that is talking about emotions and connections and how you engage and stuff like that. So you might not be really familiar with sharing these things while you're doing a presentation, but you want to make sure that you are showing versus telling people something. So like an example, if you're sharing a story where you felt embarrassed, rather than say, I felt embarrassed, you would say, my face felt immediately flushed and it turned red. My palms started to sweat and I felt like every eyeball was on me. And I thought, no, not again. And I wanted to just pull my hat over my whole entire face. Like, see, that is a lot more interesting than just saying, I felt embarrassed at that time, right? Something didn't work and, you know, that kind of thing. So make sure you're tying those things in and making it conversational, like how you would talk to your friend over coffee, right? All right, and then the G is the get back up. This is the connection back to the solution, this thing that you're sharing with people, how to do things differently now, right? So then you share, and that's why it's so important to me that, or, you know, now we know that we can do X now better. It's now my mission too, and this is the reason I'm so passionate about. Or as I did that, I realized that, hey, there's a better way. And this is what I found out, right? And the E goes back to the empowered you. So you share what you do, what you found out about going through all those struggles, tearing your hair out about whatever problem it was you were trying to solve, and mention the benefits and outcomes that you want them to do right here. And, you know, here are the top mistakes that I've seen people who are in my storytelling for Stages and Pages program do. And these mistakes will cost you connection and trust, which in turn, you know what that means, right? If people aren't paying attention to your presentation, you have a disengaged audience, what you want them to do as their next steps, they won't do. They're not going to be inspired and motivated. You lose followers if you're somebody who is like on social media doing things like that. And in turn, at the end, if your audience is full of people who might be somebody who's buying your product, then you're going to lose sales. So these are the mistakes. The top 6 mistakes is 1, being scared to go deep into the struggle, because we hate talking about our flaws and our mistakes and things that we've done wrong in the past. And sometimes we're like, let's just gloss over that. But there's usually a reason why we've changed the way we do things, or changed our mindset, or are doing what we do now, right? So don't be too scared to go deep into that struggle. it actually makes you more relatable. It makes you more of a person, and it helps people to have that connection. Number two, spending too much time in that all-time low struggle. A lot of people end up belaboring the point because they're having a hard time transitioning out. So that get back out part is really important. The third thing is leaving them with questions where anywhere in your story, if they have questions while you're talking, they won't be paying attention to you. So for example, I do also share another story I have with chronic illness. And if I don't tell people how I got better or what I did to get better, and I just like bounce into, and things are really great now because da 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 da, they're left thinking, wait a minute, what happened? It like went from A to, step 20 million here, and they're lost. And they'll start asking questions inside their head rather than paying attention to you, right? The next thing is not connecting the story back to why you're doing something, whether it's the big picture of why you do what you do in your business, or why it is that you're doing what you're doing now in a process or changing something or whatever your presentation is about. You need to really make sure that that's a tight connection so people see, because people learn through stories. They remember things through stories. And when you don't connect the story back to what you do, or why you're changing something, it just becomes a story and it doesn't have a point, because all stories have to have some sort of point. Okay. The fifth mistake is stating how you feel rather than showing people how you feel. Now, I talked about that a little bit with the I feel embarrassed versus actually describing that. When you show people, they're able to go into the actual scene with you, right? It's kind of like when you are in a movie and you feel like you are one of the characters. Like, the big screen is right there and you're sitting in the seats, but it actually feels like you're in the scene. And that's what you want to happen with people when you're sharing the story, right? And the sixth mistake is, and this may not apply to a whole lot of people here, but sometimes when we share stories that are struggles for us and we're not out the other side, it's not a story that we should tell because we haven't solved the problem. And we're kind of using that platform as the presenter or the person on stage as, your therapy, rather than showing, okay, this is what it used to be like. This is how it happened. And now we have the solution. If you don't have that solution, you need to pick a different story, pretty much, right? And again, if you want all of this written out, you can go ahead and download that at that bit.ly that I sent. And it is case sensitive. So you do have to put the all of the things after the bit.ly in capital letters. Now, I would love to see if there are any questions that come up. Garland, do you have any questions? I'm very much used to having audience participation back and forth. I don't see a whole lot of chat going on. So I guess I'm being crystal clear, or maybe you guys are like, doing things on the phone. Yes, I can.
Some people are just shy.
All right. I am very much used to, because I do things on social media.
So Vickie, when you share,
yeah,
Vickie, when you share the bit, you need to send it to all panelists and attendees. You just sent it to just all panelists.
Got it. All right. There we go. Is that good? Now everybody has it?
I think so.
Awesome.
Did that work okay, Carrie? Good. Okay.
Awesome. So I would love to hear you guys. Are you using stories in your presentations? Or are you shy? Because a lot of people think, they don't want to know stuff like that. We need to just jump right into all the details and the juicy stuff.
I know in my case, I do a lot of presenting, and I do use stories a lot. Back when I was teaching digital marketing, I used to say, it's very important for you to register your own domain name, but I didn't tell people why. And so instead I said, well, one of my clients found that when they were in a dispute with their web designer, the web designer took down their entire website and they had access to nothing. And the web designer told them, oh, it was just a problem from your computer, that it was still live. So we had to go through and reconstruct the entire thing. And people loved the story. Like they were like, oh, now I really see why it's so important. So.
Yeah, I love what Tara just said too, that she's been trying to get our team on board with telling stories during our presentations, but they're all about the data. I would love to hear why they feel like the data is that much more important. I actually have a study that was done that I was going to share with you, so this is a good segue into that. That there was a study done on the importance of storytelling over statistics. And this might be a great one for you, Tara, to take back, is that a group of researchers decided to take a look into storytelling versus data. So this is what they did. They walk up to university students and ask if they were willing to answer a brief survey in exchange for $5. The survey asked questions about contemporary tech products, something or other, but the survey itself really didn't matter. They weren't after that. What mattered was they wanted to see what would happen when they received their $5. So upon completion of the survey, each student was given that $5 along with an envelope and a letter. And they were told that they had this opportunity to donate any of their earnings to the charity Save the Children, and were asked to read the enclosed letter. And this is what is really cool about this study. Half of the letter shared information about statistical victim type of thing. So imagine the facts and figures from Save the Children's website, right? Where the other half of the people received a picture of a real girl and information about her, also taken from that same charity's website. And what happened was the participants who were told about one real person donated over twice the amount of those who were told about the much larger problem, you know, in the form of the statistics, you know, like, I don't remember what it was, like 6 million children, you know, so it was this huge statistic. But when they were told about this one specific girl, they donated over twice the amount than the other people. And that's just such a powerful result, meaning that by simply sharing this specific person and sharing the story, and it's just one, right? One versus this huge number of, like, I think it was 6 million or something like that, that there was so much more action taken than with a large piece of data that showed a huge problem. Now, I would also love, you know, because I am actually more in the coaching world, and I am assuming that most people who are on this call are in the corporate side, doing more of these PowerPoint presentations. I was in the last presentation. It was fascinating to see all the things that you can do in PowerPoint. It's crazy because, like I said, I do most of my things live streaming on social media and stuff. PowerPoint is like, I can do the slides, but I don't have like the things that come in and the things that make it look like it's a movie. It's fascinating. But the part that I think really gets more engagement is the actual story. And in corporations, it's so important as team leaders, as people who are thought of in, you know, positions of authority, to have a personal side. I think a lot of times we tend to hide those things or not talk about, you know, like, I'm not talking about give away your children's social security numbers or anything like that. But I had a client once who was like, I don't want to talk about stories because I don't want to show the personal side because, yeah, people don't even know that I have kids. But it's not about that. It's not about giving up all the details and things like that and personal information. It's so much more about your stories connect with people so that they can see themselves reflected in you. And then you will get way more buy-in You'll get remembered. And I know it's not all about being remembered, right? But you will be remembered as that person. And when you can do that, people then will look forward to those meetings with you versus dreading going to them. Because we've all been to those meetings, right? Because I was in corporate before doing what I did. And sometimes those meetings can really drag on, right? All right, so I've gotten a couple of people here. Trainer people want to hire us to show them how to use buttons on PowerPoint, but they neglect the design and the storytelling aspect. Absolutely, because it's the PowerPoint presentation lends itself to creating that movie, right? With all the cool little things that it does now and the storytelling, but it's also not just the storytelling within the PowerPoint itself, it's the storytelling in the presenter, right? The trainer also needs to have that story. And what I find really interesting and great for people to do is to find those 2 or 3 stories that they can use in different areas as like the main stories that they're known for. When people look at you, they're like, oh yeah, that's the guy who, or yeah, that's the lady who, and they fill it in with the story. And then in other instances, when you're doing your presentations, you just want to bring in that element of, hey, I'm a real person. I'm just not this data. And so then you bring in smaller stories that are everyday stories, which is, again, something else that I teach in the Storytelling for Stages and Pages program that I have, again, mostly in social media and presentations and stuff like that, because it's those little stories that illustrate the point that you're trying to make. And what's fascinating is so many people tell me, I don't have stories. I'm not really interesting. I don't really have anything to say. My life is really boring. But you can really create a story out of almost anything that happens to you. From, and this is kind of funny, I don't know why this just popped into my head. Most of my friends know that I love having, I don't know that love is the right word, but a meme just got sent to me, and this is why I'm thinking of it, that toilet paper rolls are supposed to go overhand, not underhand. And you can take that one thing and talk about, you know what? I believe that there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And then go into a point with it. So it can be a really small thing, and or it could be a bigger thing that happened to you. The other day I went to Atlanta. I live in Michigan. There was a huge snowstorm prior to the plane taking off. We had delay number 1. We had delay number 2. And then we had to wait for the airline flight attendant, because I think the one that we were supposed to have must have gotten on a different flight, or they got rearranged, or I don't know what. So we're missing a flight attendant. Eventually, they just called out to any flight attendant who would actually take our flight, which was actually funny. We get on the plane, sit there for an hour. We finally de-ice the plane, right? And then we get to be third in line, and there's a medical emergency. They're calling over the loudspeaker, any doctors, any nurses on board, because we need some help. So we decide that the medical emergency is too severe. So we turn around, go back to the terminal, like who's been there before, right? Go back to the terminal, let them off, and then the loudspeaker, they say, if you know you've already missed your connecting flight, you can get off if you want to redirect or find a different flight. So then people get off. And for some reason, people got on as well, which I thought was a little strange. But we think we're going to get going. And then the next announcement is, we've been sitting around so long, we don't have enough gas anymore. So now we got to wait to refuel. And then they tell us we're going to push off, but a half hour later, we're still sitting there wondering why we haven't pushed off yet. And then I get back on and say, hey, medical equipment was taken off. We need to get more medical equipment on, because we can't take off without the missing pieces to our emergency bag, or whatever they call it. And finally push off after that. And I get to Atlanta hours and hours later. And this is a lesson in perseverance and commitment. Because guess what? Halfway through that flight, some people decided to get off the plane. They abandoned Well, it was a plane, but they abandoned ship, right? And where in our lives and where in business and where in our jobs do we sometimes get so far and we want to give up? We say it's not worth it. We're uncomfortable because the plane was uncomfortable. And we're thinking, is it really worth it to do this thing? And I remember thinking, okay, at the other end, and if you know me at all, you know that I love going to the outlet mall. At the other end was an outlet mall, in addition to the thing that I was actually going to Atlanta for. And I was like, nope, I gotta get to that outlet mall. So see how like we can take a story that is fairly universal. Everybody's had a plane delay, but then this end up being pretty much a comedy of events that actually happened because it just kept going on and on and on and on, right? And we can take that story and find the point and the meaning and something that we want to say about it, and then connect it to the thing we want to talk about: perseverance, commitment, not giving up, doing things that may be uncomfortable, how to get through when you feel like giving up. Like there's so many ways I could go with that you can do with basically anything out there, any story that comes to you. And it creates a universality of it that creates that connection with other people. Is that a good example? Does that help you guys? Tara says, Brene Brown says, stories are just data with a soul. Getting people to feel through story drives engagement and action. Absolutely, Tara. That is exactly what I am all about. It was one of those things where I always thought that I was going to be that grandma in the rocking chair telling stories to all my kids and grandkids. And, the interesting thing is up in Finland, where it's very, very cold, and they are always around. I just imagine this, okay, and it could be totally wrong, that they are always around a fire, and they've learned through generations and generations and generations to tell stories. 1 out of 10 people in Finland are authors. It's a huge percentage. 82% of the population wants to be an author, wants to write a book. Of course, I write books for businesses. And yet less than 1%, it's almost 0.5%, actually go and finish the whole entire book. Now, some people have books on their computer that they never put out. But what's interesting about that is that because the Finnish are so good at storytelling, 10% of their population is authors. That's how they have engagement and they communicate with each other. And here's the thing too, whenever we're having a conversation with somebody, we talk in stories. We remember in stories. So that's why it's so terribly, terribly important. Now, I want to open it up for some more questions. I was hoping to get a lot more out of the chat. Garland, what do you got for me?
Well, it's interesting because we are very data focused here at Presentation Point. One of our main products is a software that is a data bridge that lets people build really intriguing things with it. But my focus with the developing of content for our website and our videos and everything has been stories. My focus has been, what are our clients doing with our product? And it's very cool because it's much easier for me to see what these amazing creative people have done with our product than for me to come up with, well, you could do this with it and you could do that with it, because that's hypothetical. And our clients astonish us. I mean, they're brilliantly creative. And so a huge part of what we do is learning from our clients and then sharing that and putting that up on our website and making people aware of it. And when we do try to make sales, which of course we do have to do at times, we often do that by showing case studies or stories of how our other clients are using it.
Absolutely. And I love that you bring that up, because when we're talking about sales, when you transition to an offer from your story, you actually have a little more permission at that point, because people feel like they're connected to you and that you're not being sleazy about it, right? And people can't argue with stories, just like people can't argue with those case studies, right? this is what happened. These are the results that are given. So a lot of times when I talk to my clients about how do you close sales easier, is that you answer every objection with a story, or a lot of times we already know what the normal objections are, right? So you preface those sales conversations, and before they even can get to that question, you share a story that overcomes that objection so that they don't even have it anymore. And now you've taken away this sleazy, pushy, slimy car salesman idea or feeling that you have, because you've got a different connection, right? And also another thing that I tell people to do is that you ask them for permission, and that makes the offer a little more dignified, right? You can give people an out, ask to talk to only those who are interested. And I'm imagining this like in a conference room or something like that, where you have a lot of people, and what you're offering may not be for everybody, right? And it's okay for it not to be for everybody. And you let them know that it's okay to not be for everybody. But if you have any inkling or you're thinking you might be interested, there's no harm in listening to more, right? And sometimes I use the whole thing like, and we can still be friends so that people feel like you're not pushing it on them. And I think that the stories just really help so much more to get all of our points across, no matter what it is. Every time I talk to people about writing books, we're really good at, here are our teaching points, right? I want to teach them these 5 steps or these 3 steps. And then you just tell them what those things are. But when you illustrate it, it gives them the ahas, and it shows them, oh, this is how I apply it. So it works so, so much better. And a lot of times there are companies out there too that attach their storytelling to a cause, right? Cause storytelling is amazing for companies. If you think of Toms, if you think of Bombas, right? Every time you buy a pair of shoes or a pair of socks, somebody who doesn't have shoes or socks gets some. Like, that's just a feel good, right? So when we get those stories as well, it's very, very impactful. Developing content for our clients can be challenged for that reason. We have hypotheticals while they have real data, real goals, real problems to overcome. I can't see the full name on that one, but if you could elaborate a little bit more. Is it Carrie?
This is Carrie Barbosa, yeah.
Oh, okay. Saying that developing content for clients is a challenge for that reason. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Are we able to bring people on and have them actually speak, Carolyn? Or is that too much?
Given the computer glitches we've had, I'm kind of hesitant to make any changes right now. We've had a real tough day with computer glitches. So,
she just said yes. So I'm not sure what the content is, which part of the content is challenging, the actual content or the stories, because you say that you have hypotheticals while they have real data.
Can you craft a story around their problem?
Yeah. And I think that background is teaching. I've not been in the corporate world. Okay. I think as well, like that's amazing, because I met a teacher the other day who actually helps people create courses. And one of the things she talks about a lot is how kids learn and how to keep kids engaged in school. And it's also through story, which is just fascinating too, to hear that it's everywhere. Hard to relate to the real thing. I'm wondering, like, to me, I'm thinking, do you not have, is this a new thing that you're doing without any past clients? The other thing is as well, whatever you've developed, did you not use it on yourself when you developed it? Was there not a story in the development of that program and product? We have real data. So it might be a matter of, rather than finding the story that goes with the data, you're finding the story that goes with the why behind what you do. If you haven't heard of Simon Sinek, go look up his YouTube video on the power of the why. because people don't buy things from you because of the thing. They buy it because of the why behind that thing. We all have somewhat of a commodity to share with the world, right? So how do people actually pick? If Joe does the same thing as Sally, how do they pick, right? And they pick based on that connection, and they picked based on the why behind what you do. There are plenty of other book coaches out in the world. I have a little quirky of a personality. Some people like my humor, some people don't. And they'll pick me because I'm sharing an experience with them that they want to continue. I also remember that when we were picking real estate agents, you know, there are a lot of real estate agents and most people know more than one. So it's kind of hard, you know, and I got a referral from two really good friends for two different real estate agents. And I distinctly remember the one came over and he had this brochure, binder, whatever you want to call it, put together for me about comparables, about data, about, you know, sales in the area, about square foot, average price per square foot, and all that stuff. And he was a great guy, had a wonderful conversation, seemed nice enough, right? But, you know, that's what he sent me. He sent me all the things that made him look like he knew his stuff. And he did. Then the next realtor came over. She did not bring me comparables. And we went through the house. She talked about my house and her thoughts on it. And guess what? We connected on the fact that we're both shoe hoards. I love shoes. So we got to talking about shoes and how much shelf space I needed for my shoes and how much closet space I needed for my shoes. And we didn't get to really talking about all the qualifications. She shared with me why she was passionate in being out that 9 to 5. And guess what? Guess which one I picked? I picked the one that I had the connection with because we talked about shoes. And that sometimes may be what you need to go with if you don't have a specific story that goes with the data. Go back to the why behind what you do. Does that help? That's what we strive for. Why would they hire us versus going with online course yourself? Exactly. You're sharing an experience. People these days are buying experiences. Things have changed. Like storytelling is supposed to be the thing in marketing in the upcoming, I mean, it already is, but in the upcoming years is going to be very, very much more important, because just think of like our attention spans, right? And everything, even on Facebook that we're looking at, are these little clips. If you love the Goalcast clips, you know, the inspirational things that are out there, or little stories about, you know, the little kids or whatever, or cats or whatever you've got on your feed, they're little snippets of stories. And when you are a company and your brand does that, you get way more engagement. You get way more shares. I wish I had written down the statistics here, but I didn't. I apologize. But it's immensely, that's my number. It's immensely more than if you are just sharing your product, what it does. Your product, you are not really selling what you think you sell. I have a client who is a cleaner. So she cleans commercial and she cleans residential. Got into this discussion and I said, you do not sell cleaning. Like everybody, you know, out there with a cleaning service, you then end up competing on price when you are selling just that thing, right? What is she selling? She's selling time freedom. She's selling convenience. She's selling the fact that I don't have to scrub my toilet because I think it's gross and I don't want to. Avoidance of the things that you don't want to do, right? And when you sell and share stories based on those benefits and outcomes versus the thing, you end up not competing on price anymore. You're competing by experience, and now the price is just, you can start charging more, quite honestly, when you are charging for an experience and you're going for those benefits and outcomes versus the thing that you actually think that you're selling. Hopefully that makes sense. And the other thing too is when you have a product, you want to use that story to make people feel like, you know what, I aspire to be a client of, rather than I'm going to settle by being a client of. Does that make sense to everybody? Garland, what do you think of that? That's right.
Definitely, you don't want their choice because you're the cheapest, or they're just settling. You want them to seek you out. You want to be the lighthouse, say, attracting people, not just the cheapest one in the particular marketplace.
Right, exactly. And the differentiation is you as a person. You know, a lot of people will come to me, I don't want to be the face of my company. I want to just create a character. And I know that people do that. And there are definitely companies out there who do that. You know, you got Geico who has the character and whatever, but you do have to come up with, what is it that you want to stand for? What are those characteristics? And show those in your stories, right? And then people start relating and being like, yeah, they're taking a stand for something. And, you know, we could go into the weeds here, but, you know, in marketing as well, you want to attract and you want to repel. People sometimes think, oh, but if I tell that story, it's going to turn people off. Well, that's great marketing. You want some people to be repelled by your message because you want the other people to be gung-ho, sold out for your product, program, services, whatever it is. There is an article about 1,000 true fans. If you haven't looked that article up, look that one up as well, where when you're a company and you can get 1,000 people to really be your cheerleaders and be your fans, you don't need anything else, and your program and business is really going to flourish. And the other day I actually heard from one of my friends that he believes that it's actually not 1,000 anymore, because the way social media is these days and how far reaching you can get and the organic reach and how much people are seeing these days, that's not 1,000 true fans that you need anymore. It's just 100. And when you have those 100, they buy from you no matter what. They continue to buy from you, and no matter what you put out, they'll buy the next thing, and then they go out and tell their friends. And when you have those sold out people, then it makes business and sales and growth and all that a lot faster, a lot easier too. All right, so I want to wrap up with just a quote from Plato that, I don't know, it's interesting. I hear a lot of quotes about stories, but this one was a little new to me when I was looking up some new things for you guys. So Plato says, those who tell the stories rule society. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and feedback is on that. Garland, help me out.
Well, it's a very interesting comment, because this is the age where stories can be shared so easily. I mean, with YouTube, we've all got our own television station essentially, and we can reach thousands of people. I mean, you know, I can't believe how many people watch our Presentation Point YouTube channel. And of course, with social media, that can be shared. And of course, now we've seen the danger in how some people are trying to take over the storytelling by interfering with normal storytelling from other countries and things like that. So it's a very good point that the people who are telling the stories, in the past, it used to be independent media, but media is not independent anymore.
Well, I love that you bring up YouTube, because a lot of people think of YouTube as a social media platform, but really it is a search engine, you know, because, you know, Google owns them and everything. And your content is, timeless. And it really does depend, right? Like if you're somebody who talks about Instagram, obviously you're going to have to change stuff a lot because they keep changing everything. But for example, my husband loves to watch fishing on Lake Erie. And the other day he was watching something, I think it was 9 months old, but it was still completely applicable. People on YouTube are looking for things that are going to teach them something. You know, they're actually typing in search words and stuff like that to find your things. So what I love about YouTube is so long as you have something worth saying all the time, and of course put your story in there, it will continue to get found over and over and over again. Where, you know, a tweet is only, I don't even know how many seconds, Facebook post is only a few minutes, you know, and all those things. Tara said, can you repeat? Yes. So Plato said, those who tell the stories rule society. You want me to put that in? I can put it in the chat. There you go. And don't forget too that if you want a breakdown of the STAGE formula and also the little mistakes that people make, go to that bit.ly and you can download the exact module. It's module 3 of my Storytelling for Stages and Pages program. All right, cool. Anybody have any last questions? All right, well, I hope that this was interesting for you. I hope that it's something that you can take back and use. And I hope those who have said that their companies rather talk about data, hope you can take some of this back to them and show them that studies have been done where the story is way more effective than just sharing the data.
Thank you so much, Vickie. And if people want to get a hold of you or contact you or follow you, how do they do that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You can go to my website at www.vickiegould.com. Just make sure you spell all of it right. You can follow me on Facebook. If you just type in Vickie Gould in Google, basically everything comes up. My email is vickie@vickiegould.com. I can type that in as well. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, get more tips, you know, that kind of thing, let me know. You're welcome, Lori. I'm glad. I'm glad you had a lot of takeaways, Carrie. Tara, in the last 60 minutes, you've given me so much ammunition to bring back to my team. Awesome. Good. Well, I hope that makes it way more effective when you are doing your presentations. I know I was the one. I don't know how many other people had PowerPoint presentations. I know I was the one that you just had to look at my face this whole time.
Well, there's many ways to do presentations. Sometimes we can over rely on the visuals. Like some of our other instructors had a great way of making the visuals so much more interesting, which was amazing, which I thought was fantastic, because too many people fall into the death by PowerPoint trap of the stuff. So yeah, so it was great. Thank you so much, Vickie. That was fantastic. Lots of great takeaways for people, and you had lots of really good questions. So obviously people found it very useful. And we hope to have you back another time.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks for having me on.